Friends, welcome back. All right, guys, I'm sorry. I have to interrupt the normal intro. I and Alex, we are so beyond excited tonight.
Oh my God, it's happening again.
It's happening. Today we stand on the precipice of the infinite black abyss. That is October on the Film Alchemist podcast, right? So you guys know the deal. 31 pods, 31 days. This year we have gone above and beyond to get as many awesome guests as we can. We have some new films we'll be covering in the theater. But we are covering the entire Child's Play series. So, again, this is kind of our Playthings of Evil curation. Again, the podness, the madness, whatever the words are. I'm so excited. So, guys, again, this is a lot of episodes. We've been trying to let you guys know. Don't snooze us. Don't lose us. I know it's a lot of episodes. Thank you for being with us on this journey. We couldn't be more excited. We think this will be our biggest and best year yet.
It already has been. Honestly, you guys have made things so awesome already, and doing another horror abyss is just icing on the cake as far as I'm concerned.
And also, guys, if you're not already a little business, sorry guys, you know the deal. I got to do a little business.
You got to get
we
the
have
business.
Our playtime. If you guys haven't yet, you can go to patreon.com and contribute to our show. You can join our Patreon community, right? Become one of us in the Alchemy Den. On our Patreon, you have the ability, 2 of our episodes of these 31 will be voted on and selected from our patrons. So you guys will have a voice in what we're doing over there. So again, patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. You guys can get in for as little as $1 a month. Join the community. Make your vote heard. For a little bit more at various tiers, you can begin to pick the episodes you want. Whatever that is, you guys can decide how much you're able and willing to help us out, and we will reward you with a content bonanza. We're always trying to come up with new content for you guys. So thank you to our patrons already, and we hope that we are now talking to many more of you patrons soon to be. So welcome. And we're excited. You can help us for free by going to wherever you find the show. Leave us a 5-star. Leave us a rating and review. A couple sentences, 5 stars. Helps us defeat the algorithmic serial-killing voodoo dolls that oppress us, right? This is a great way to help us find new audience, find new like-minded alchemists to bring into the fold. So thank you, guys. Make sure you go to YouTube, subscribe to our channel, Film Alchemist. You can find video versions of most of our pods there, along with other content that we're always working on bringing you over there. It's a good time. You can email the show, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. That's a great way to just get a hold of me and Alex. If you guys just want to talk, tell us what you think of the show, movies you'd like to hear covered, hit us up, guys. We read everything.
True.
We appreciate that. We're also on all the socials you're on. Get a hold of us. Reach out. We're there. You're there. Let's party. All right. Enough business. Alex, we decided to start this, our biggest month in the abyss yet, with the series Child's Play. I think Child's Play is the most consistently underappreciated horror movie series. I think on a per entry basis, it has about as high of quality across the board as any other major horror franchise. I would argue that almost every single entry is its own weird, delightful joy. I think Chucky, as voiced by Bradley Dorff, is an all-time villain. It's a perfect mixing of animatronics and absurdity and madness and actor. And they're just this amazing weird thing. The biggest paradox at the heart of Chucky, which is most exemplified in Child's Play, is that there's no fucking way this movie and this series should work. It's an impossibility on paper, right? And I grew up in the era where this was a thing, right? With the Teddy Ruxpins and all that.
Oh, yeah.
It's an impossibility on paper to me that this movie should work and have become as beloved and enormous as it did. But here we fucking are all these years later. Alex!
Yep.
Hit me with your opening thoughts on Child's Play.
I agree with everything you said. I think Child's Play is a shockingly underrated entry into the horror abyss we currently are living in for the month of October. But overall, I think that like there is nothing more terrifying, in my opinion, than things that should not be terrifying trying to kill you. Like, that's just like, that is human nature. Like, we never assume. That's like the idea of like the stepfather and parents in general. We never assume our parents are going to try to kill us. Sometimes they do in these movies. We never assume our toys are going to kill us. I can tell you right now, tonight, I put my kid to bed with his favorite stuffed animal and thought to myself, do I let him sleep with his stuffed animal tonight? Yeah. Legitimately, after watching this movie, I had that thought simply because Child's Play is that kind of movie. And the whole series at large is just one of those things that is an evergreen, shockingly evergreen, in my opinion. Because, yeah, the elevator pitch is insane. Like, Don Mancini is a fucking genius. Like, whatever the... Like, imagine this. This is literally like, so you got an idea for a movie? Yeah. What's it called? Child's Play. Like that title. What's the movie about exactly? Well, it's about a man who voodoos himself into a doll and then starts murdering people.
Like a tough doll? Like a WWE wrestling buddy?
Yeah, like a wrestling doll? No. Like what? Like Small Soldiers, right? No. It's like a little Teddy Ruxpin type thing. Get out of my office. I don't want to see you ever again. Get out of my office. That is how that should have happened.
Cabbage Patch. But I think what is funny too is like you watch it now and it's insane. It's fucking insane. But not only that,
it's nuts. There's stuff that makes no sense.
Assault on the nuclear family, right? Which is something I never thought about because the first time I saw Child's Play, it's the first great scare of my life. I saw Child's Play. Many of you who listen to this show know I had a bit of a not the most on his game father for a while in my early life. And he used to have to go to the bars every weekend he had us, right? Just scheduling, right? And so my babysitter became Joe Bob in Monster Vision.
Sometimes it's a kerfuffle.
Yeah, it's, adults, right? It's hard to make things match. So my babysitter became Joe Bob Monster Vision and whatever VHSs he picked out. And him and my aunt were big horror movie people. And when they'd go to the bar, we'd just get left with tapes. And you just see a tape with the doll on it. And you're like, something feels wrong and off about this. But it's got to be for me. It's a doll, right? Like, I have dolls. This will be great. And I turned this movie on, and I was no more than 6 years old, right? And I put this in the VHS and watched it.
Right.
And it fucking scarred me so deeply. I remember running to my grandparents' room and crying, and they had to put on Puff the Magic Dragon to try to bring me back, right? Try to level me out. And it was this truly scarring event. And I don't know that that's even what this movie, the audience it's going for, is like, we'll lure in kids and scare the shit out of them. But that's the unintended consequence. Watching it now as an older guy with a family and myself, you are struck by the hatred of the concept of the nuclear family, the Leave It to Beaver family, and how that has failed. And that really leapt off the screen at me.
Well, it's really interesting. Like, I didn't realize this movie was made in 1988. I thought this movie was made, like, towards the beginning of the 80s. The fact that it's made in 1988 is really fascinating to me because, like, we're getting at the end of the 80s, we're just getting into the 90s and that kind of thing, and it's a really fascinating time capsule because, like, yeah, like, Andy and his mom that is not a typical family you saw in these kinds of movies. Like, I mean, I can tell you right now, the first time I saw it, I was probably much younger than I should have been and did not understand where the dad was. Did they ever bring that up in the movie? I missed it if they did. Dead? They just said he's dead.
They mentioned, because that's one of the, when he's talking to Chucky, right? He's like, Chucky said he came from heaven where he knew daddy. And you're like, oh, God, that's like a really sly and fucking horrifying way to drop detail.
I couldn't remember if that was, I thought that was the case because I remember.
It's like 30 to 40 minutes into the film.
Yeah, because I remember it's like kind of a throwaway. But I like that a lot. Like, I think like, the actress, it's funny because honestly, I remember seeing this movie and I had completely forgotten that Catherine Hicks was the mom. And then watching Seventh Heaven. Yeah. Much later in life and realizing it's the same mother. I'm like, boy, does this track. This is very uncomfortable when you think about it.
She became a worse mother.
She became the worst mother of all time by just like, instead of collecting dolls, she just collected children and just ruined them.
Bad children.
But except Jessica Biel, God bless her. But no, honestly, like it's a really fascinating thing, and like this really, it's pretty revolutionary, to be honest with you. Like it's a single mom and her kid living in an apartment, by the way, a nice apartment in Chicago. That place is like a historic landmark, by the way.
This is a different era, right? But because that's the strange thing. And I don't know that this is the first film that did it, but this was a really big hit. A lot of horror movies weren't crossing over.
Pretty fascinating.
Yeah, like they had become, VHS and cult classics. Right. Like they found their audience afterwards. This was kind of one of those everyone was knowing and talking about Child's Play.
What's fascinating is that like normally these kinds of like this kind of family setup, normally it's a major plot point in the film. That's at least my experience. Like any kind of movie that sets up a, single mother with a child, like normally it is a central plot point. It's a moment in the story itself. This is almost inconsequential. Like I think it's really fascinating that Karen and Andy's like relationship is the central piece. It's not their like combined grief over the loss of their parent. Like it's almost it's not mentioned. Like you said, it's like 30 to 40 minutes in. It's really interesting that's how kind of this starts. You just are accepting the setup.
We were just watching Andy do shit. Like I was like, is my 6-year-old, would he even dare touch a toaster?
No, yeah, I thought the same thing.
Shit like that, you're like, oh, damn. And they use it as a really cute way. Like, on his birthday, he's making his mom this really funny child breakfast. But anyway, what you find
very
about
unhealthy
the dad
breakfast,
that's really funny.
Shockingly so.
Yeah, and the way they're just like, yeah, we'll just go ahead and murder the idea of families in this film real quick. Because what it is the dad becomes this empty void to where not only are the burdens of both parents placed on her, and that's used to interesting effect, but it creates this movie is an attack on the idea that we were raised by TV. Because I had forgotten somewhat how branded the good guys were in this, right? He's watching the good guy show, dressed
Pajamas,
as a good guy. Cereal, and they're everywhere. They're fucking everywhere. And I forgot about the giant Chungus Chucky, right? Who's on the show like, I'm Ozzy, get your dog. Yeah. And I was like, imagine the cottage boutique industry of these characters who wake up the day and be like, wait, we're representing a fucking serial killer doll? Like, what? Yeah. What does that giant Barney Chungus Chucky do when he wakes up to that headline the next day? 2 cops go on record, good guys are bad guys. Like, that headline, they should have started part 2 with the headline, good guys are bad guys. But anywho, it's so built in. And so the idea of, and they play this, right, that as the Chucky doll comes in, he becomes this replacement for father and mother. When, the lady gets hucked out the window and, all that goes down. Hey, would you like to come sleep with me tonight? It's a pretty traumatic night. He's like, it's okay. I got Chucky. Right? Like, I got dad. You're a dad. Yep. You know that. It's like either they want one parent, mom or dad, and the other one can fuck off. Like,
oh, totally. It's
they
brutal.
Nestle in. And then there's this thing that as the movie goes on, Andy and Chucky begin to be shot in the same way, where now you're watching your child become a product, a branded product that you don't recognize. The TV stole your boy.
Totally.
And that was stuff that just all washed over me when I was younger. I was just like, toy scary.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the really interesting thing is this, and that's what's great about Child's Play, I think, is the themes and the concepts of just like, it's a serial killer stuck in a doll, a child's toy. The concepts and themes are evergreen. Like, you can never not have a really fascinating. I can't believe I just rhymed. I'm embarrassed by that. But
even just saying it out loud, I was like, fucking the Lakeshore Strangler becomes a cabbage. It's fucking.
It's insane.
It's laughable.
It should not work. There is absolutely nothing on God's green earth that should mean that it works. And yet we're enthralled, and we've seen how many are we watching this? Like there's 7 or 8 of them.
8 or 9 now, and they have a show coming out. Yeah.
And a show. Like there's so much fodder to be had. And it's a fascinating thing to watch because and it's terrifying. Like, the scene when Catherine, because even Catherine Hicks, when Karen finally like starts screaming at the doll, and you're just like, how, as a parent, like, look, of course I get frustrated with my kid. Of course I yell at him. Like, it's one of those things where you're like, how many times have you done that? But like, I've never done that to an inanimate object. Like, having to do that, and like, honestly, I thought about this when I was watching the movie. I wrote it down. I was like, is she actually yelling at the doll, or is she yelling at herself for like not being a present parent? Like,
you know who
there's
she's
a
yelling
lot
at?
of that.
She's yelling at the dad who's not there to help her.
Ooh, okay.
That's
I see what
she's
I see
doing
that
in that moment. But see, that turn right there. And the point you made is the exact point I want to get across in this podcast more than anything, is that Child's Play is doing so much more than we remember. Chucky became and went on this trajectory because he was so popular and so cool. Rightly so. All that's true. He went down this Freddy Krueger. He became a fucking Bugs Bunny, a Looney Tune, right?
totally.
He lost, and as they went on, they got more into the funniness of how he was attacking people and this and that. This movie is really fucking scary at times. That first scene when Maggie's watching him, and she calls it the Home Alone Willies, I think. Mm-hmm. Right? The single white female thing, right? Like, I'm here alone in this big city, and who knows? And it's fucking, you really understand that emotion, right? They do a little hinting at the POV of Chucky. Something's going on. We kind of know, but she's just in the room, and the TV turns back on. And then the kid's like, I didn't fucking do it. Chucky did it. Imagine being in someone else's house, and you're like, oh, their kid's having a mental breakdown, but I've got to watch them for 3 more hours. That's great. And then the news is on, and the news is all about this serial killer. And the shots of her walking through that house, right? The apartment. And she's kind of looking, and we're waiting for the bang. It's so perfectly crafted. The tension gets so fucking high. And again, when it shouldn't. Because the funny thing we've always talked about, when we start talking about horror movies, and I'm always like, well, Child's Play is really good. And they're like, it's a fucking doll. Kick it. And you're like, yeah, like I get that part. But the movie doesn't fuck around with that, right? The movie is using these bigger concepts to scare us. And the doll's just part of that insanely fun elevator pitch, right?
Right.
But the first half of the movie is really fucking scary without kind of acknowledging the big, turd in the punch bowl.
Right. Well, I mean, and I think that what's interesting too is the movie, I thought about, because I had honestly, I had forgotten a lot about.
They blend in a lot.
Yeah, like I had forgotten. It wasn't that. Like I had remembered I remembered the ending very well, but I had forgotten a lot of these interim parts. Like there's bits where I forgot that the strength Chucky has is the same strength he would have as an adult, which is interesting. And I was like, that is an interesting like.
But
save.
his mass is still less than 1 pound. So it's very weird magic.
Right, because I thought about that too. Well, this is the thing is like I thought about that too. And I was like, is this like it's the unspoken part about like the voodoo magic? Is it like the center? Is your center of gravity the same as an adult's when you're a child's toy? Like I mean, again, it's like it's almost inconsequential because like
you have to. This is what we always say, and this one has one of the big ones. You got to give them one. There's one little leap of logic that you gotta tuck away.
This is the leap of logic you have to give
doll
for
fighting
all
you have to give
these
up
movies.
On. That's never gonna be okay.
You have to give up on the physics of Chucky because the physics of Chucky are never going to make sense. But like, it doesn't matter because that's what makes when the doll face stops looking like a doll face. Like oh my God, as a kid. That still scares the shit out of me. Like that face is terrifying. I don't care who you are. Like there's nothing more upsetting and more unnerving than the Chucky face. Like,
and that's the face we all remember him as.
Totally.
Right?
Yes.
The funny thing is I was so impressed with how fucking scary they make a fucking dopey face Chucky.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
so the thing that struck me in this one, right, is you're like, this isn't a scary serial killer movie. Mm-hmm. This is scary because it's no one fucking believes me movie.
Yes. Oh, no. It's like this whole Boy Who Cried Wolf thing.
This is an invasion of the body snatcher setup. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know the truth and no one will tell me. So some of the scariest shit in the film we know what's happening really early on, right? And they do the, Chucky face. And we see the lady get hit with the good guy's hammer, which, why the fuck were kids' toys real hammers back then? That's neither here nor there.
There's a lot of toy. The children's toys is like, man, the 80s were amazing.
Yeah, let me just say the Good Guys Corporation had a body count before Chucky became Chucky.
The Good Guys Corporation is like that Dan Aykroyd bit in SNL where he's got a bag of glass. You got a big bag of glass. Kids will love it. That's all I think of every time I see the Good Guys Corporation. I'm like, this is bad.
Fuck it. We'll make a commercial and a cartoon, right? This was our parents being afraid of Ninja Turtles and then having to go buy the VHSs and go to ICE in the store. But that doll becomes scary. In the first scene where I was really fucking scared, right? So the mom won't listen to him. She keeps being like, stop telling lies. He's a fucking murder suspect, right? We'll do a little bit more on the insane, Baby's Day Out segment of the movie where it's on the L. But besides that, right? She finds him in a police station.
Yeah.
And watching her son, she's like, this is fucking serious, right? Her good son, the son that gave her breakfast in bed, this good kid. She sees him stand up and start hitting the doll and being like, he's lying. He's doing it on purpose. That scene scared the fuck out of me today. It might be the scariest scene in the movie because I was sitting there as a parent trying to imagine.
Yeah. No,
what
I thought the same
happens
thing.
when your child who you love and raise and just one day before was a perfect little angel. And you see them have a mental break. And then a psychiatrist pops in. Ha! We got you in our fucking psychiatric booby trap. We're taking your kid. And you smash cut that with her walking into the house alone with Chucky under her arm. It's fucking horrifying, right? Then she has the yell at dad moment. And then they just hit us with one of those great horror turns. And that's when it starts becoming Chucky's movie. But that scene in the interrogation room... It's like this. I love when horror movies age with me and new things become scary. And this is one of the best I found.
That is by far the scariest moment. It is one of those things where you watch it and you're, especially only as a parent. Like,
yeah, this is we need to talk about Andy scene, and you're like, ah.
It's like it wasn't even like it's scary. It's scary in the sense of the sadness that kind of washes, like the sadness that washed over me watching that. You're just like. This poor kid is just like shouting to the heavens for adults to believe him, and no one's gonna believe him. Like, then on top of that, and then I thought about it as like, how would I feel if I was in a fucking police station and they told me like your kid needs to go to like a home for like a couple of days while we decide whether or not you're like an unfit parent. Like that scared me more than anything. Is like, oh my God, like imagine being a single parent in a metropolitan area. You have like the job you have, like it broke my heart, man. Honestly, like that was just it was more depressing than it was anything like scary. I was just like, oh my God.
Imagine that though, right? What you said is they're judging me. Imagine what fucking Andy's going through, and he's really going to be scarred by that more than the murders probably, because he knows the truth, right? He's like, oh fuck, my own mom, and that's what I had to ask myself. I'm like, would I be like, hey, cops, can you fuck off since you're violating rights left and like left, right,
questioning the kid without a parent present seems
why not just give him a shot of Jack and really loosen him up, you fucking chodes? And I was like, can you get the fuck out of here so I can talk to my son? And like my own son, would I believe him if he said a toy came to life? I spend my whole life saying, have an imagination, be creative. These toys are little avatars for you to fill up with your mind. And the thought that one of them isn't filled with his mind, but this fucking serial killer, and they do this clever thing too, where the mom doesn't even know who Charles Lee Ray is.
Yeah.
And one, that's a different era before everyone was so connected, but also it shows you how fucking busy she is. She doesn't have time to just sit and watch this shit.
Right. I mean, in the Child's Play world, this could it's fast because they did this in the 2018 Halloween. And I always was like, that has to be how, when they reboot Child Play, how it goes. Have
you not seen the reboot yet?
No. You
are gonna be excited. I can't believe how bad people shit on it. They did go a very different direction.
But like that, like the version, like when they did the podcast thing in Halloween, I was like, this is like fucking in that universe, the true crime podcast of like the buddy murders is just like probably shocking. But like that is exactly how I thought about like 20 years from now, all these people are going to be talking about like, oh, this doll murdered a bunch of people, and now we have to believe in voodoo and magic and all this other shit. But it's a truly fascinating thing to watch this movie as a parent. Like, above all, like, actually, it's odd. Like, my wife's out of town this weekend, and I think that's like, it's almost hitting on a whole other
to watch.
it's a whole other octave of just like, oh my god, like, and I'm like trying to like sit there like quietly watch it while he watches like his own shit, and like not have him watch like murder upon murder and like a guy get electrocuted until he like fries, and I was just like, God, how do I like? But then I was also like holding my kid, like, I love you, like I'll always probably believe you, unless of course like. Like, but that's what it is. This movie this movie does so much. Like, we as the audience know the reality of the situation, and this is like, as I was reading, Don Mancini actually was like wanting to string the audience along a lot longer as to whether or not it was real or not, and I find that fascinating because indicting a child like that in a movie is very weird, for one, because from the jump we all see Andy as this like kind of as this victim, like especially like getting on the train and going out to like
Andy is an all-time cute kid in the movie. He's got that voice. But imagine The Exorcist if at the end they're like, actually she just really liked that crucifix. There was no devil. And you're like, whoa! Like that's a insane.
That's a very different movie. And also like
that's the bad seed which did it like 30 years before.
Right. And also like this movie particularly pushing further into the movie and not making Andy sympathetic. This is why I'm glad, like, I understand what he would want to do, but I'm kind of glad Don Mancini went the other way with it, because honestly, pushing further into the movie and making Andy suspect doesn't do anything for the story, but also kind of ruins like half the movie for you, because once you realize we all know it's Chucky from the jump. Yeah. Once everyone else starts realizing it, though, it becomes that much more terrifying, because as adults, we're all thinking like Chris Sarandon, like the guy who plays the cop. Chris Sarandon's literally like running around, trying so hard to like not believe it. He spends the entire movie trying to like avoid believing what's happening.
We would literally all be the same way, like, totally. Okay. Are you fuck? And then Chucky's stabbing us, and we're like, wait a sec.
Right. And like how like exactly like we're all the cops in this movie just going, there's no fucking way on earth his doll own mom. But this is the thing, man.
Right? So to your point, if they made it more of a Lifetime thriller, is my son bad? The Damocles sword of Chucky in this film makes this fucking thing work, right? Because a kid being a murderer is about as equally as lame as the doll did it. Because, again, I love my kid. I've never raised a hand to my kid. But if my kid stepped to me, I would turn him into pudding within 2 seconds. He would be a greasy spot like in Sin City, right? So there's no like, oh, if it's a boy, it's, blah, blah. You're playing with innocence. And you get that either way. Watching Andy get railroaded for these crimes is way fucking scarier and more brutal. The scene when he's in the fucking asylum trying to get his little stool, holding the bars with his little fucking baby hands, right? We all know if you have a kid, that little hand. Because, like, my 6-year-old now, his hands have begun to morph like fucking American Werewolf into, like, big hands. But the baby hand, the baby fingers, they're wrapped around the bar in his cute voice, Chucky's coming to kill me. And we see Chucky coming to kill him. And the doctor's like, oh, boy, let me go get my shots. And Andy sinks to the floor, and he's like, don't leave me alone. And watching him just fucking cry and be horrified, that scene today, it just laid me low. And then you match that with the scene in the kind of OR, right, where Chucky jumps him. And you see Andy, and I don't know if it's great kid acting or they just did what they needed to get him there. But him with that little scalpel, right, like Gage in Pet Sematary, and he's like going between this bewildered, horrified face to like trying to put on like a tough face for the world that's fucking him over. And it's those little extra emotional beats. you cannot milk out of the film if we are still having to believe 80% Andy did it.
I agree. I actually like the part where he's backing into the corner. Like, he tripped over like a little thing, and
yeah,
I mean, that just fucking killed me. Like, honestly,
it's like a baby playing at a man. It's fucking
Andy's
horrifying.
Performance. Like, I have been on record on this pod. I hate kid actors. Like, all of them annoy the fucking shit out of me. They're all terrible.
That's why,
like,
we're giving you the true shit.
Like, I'm gonna be honest. Like, almost every child actor I think they all suck. Like, I'm sorry. Like, actually, I think Griffey's also like, we've all said the same shit. Like, it's just not my bag.
I'm beyond amazed when a child actor is even kind of okay.
Yeah, like, I mean,
and we've worked on sets with kid actors.
Yeah, it
sucks. It's brutal.
Like, I think it's a matter, and this is truly and honestly the thing. Like, I've been, like, we've been around kid actors. Like, it's a matter of presence and, like, being present in the moment. And, like, they're kids. Like, expecting kids to be present in the moment, you're like, there's only so many Dakota Fannings in the world, and eventually, like, they just vanish, and that's part of life.
Also,
like,
to be totally fair to the kids, a shitload of adult actors don't do that well either.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah, sorry. Not to say that all kid actors are terrible, but I don't like all kid actors mainly because of, like, that kind of thing. But yeah, adults are terrible too sometimes. But, like, Andy's presence in that moment, because yes, Andy at the very beginning of the movie, like, I texted you in the middle of watching it. I was like, dude, there is just nothing. Like, there's nothing redeeming about the, like, I thought that actually, I forgot how this movie, like, opened up with Catherine Hicks's character. I thought she was waking up from, like, a bender. And I'm like, Jesus Christ.
No, she's working doubles because that little fucking dipshit manager.
Fucking dipshit manager's like, just,
you like having food for your child?
God, dude, that fucking. Also, like, again, this is like the amazing.
How that guy didn't get got is one of the big horror movie misses of all time.
This is just one of those amazing time capsules of the 80s, too. Of, like, yeah, there's a peddler out back. I'm like, a peddler? And then they go down, I'm like, a homeless guy?
You had to Google, what the fuck is a peddler?
I was just like, you mean a homeless guy?
Yeah,
a homeless guy's hawking shit and you're just going to buy it off him?
The guy in the mall who's like, hey, do you want to try this? No, stop interrupting me.
Yeah, that's the new peddler. That's the guy who's like trying to sell you like
a coffee shop.
Guy's trying to sell you like toys that fly in the air and like Dead Sea sand and shit like that.
Yeah. Dead Sea sand. Now I'd buy some Dead Sea sand.
It's true. Actually, it's really good scrub. So you know what? I take that one back.
See?
Those guys
take it back.
are doing business.
I
got peddled. What do you want me to say? Hey,
but
look,
also,
I'm not above
that
it.
beat though, because again, that's another of those moments that doesn't dawn on you. Because when I watched it as a kid, I was like, "What a sack of shit his mom is." And my wife was like, "Well, why?" And I was like,
I thought the same thing.
One pair of jeans in the box that is the exact shape of the toy he wanted.
Shitty. That is so.
And I was like,
mean.
that piece of shit. And then as an adult, you watch it now, and you're like, oh, well, yeah, man. Like, there are hard realities of, you know, hey, we got to pay for this big-ass apartment, and you like to have your cereal to eat so you don't starve to death. So, hey, man, I can't spend $100 on a fucking creepy doll. I can't.
Right.
And I got you a toy set that can actually murder people. Isn't that cool? I want it.
Well, I want the Chucky doll that comes with it.
Right,
yeah.
But those two are like new adult beats for me, right? That look of crushing disappointment in their face.
Dude, that
God.
hurt. That hurt, man.
Yeah, and then the turnaround when she comes home, these aren't groceries. And he opens it, and he holds it, and he gives her that hug. And she won the day. And it sucks because you should win the day parenting by making sure your kid's alive and has food. Right? And you could say that her capitalist instincts led them to the worst weekend of their life. But we all have been there as parents, right? We all
that is the
have
shout
that
out to this pod. Anyone who's listening who's a parent, you are doing a good job by feeding and clothing and making your kid happy. Don't get them an animatronic doll that talks to them because this very well might happen. But
this could be you.
But, like, I agree, though. There is, like, this really fascinating undertone of, like, how horrible is capitalism? Because, like, even at the very beginning of the movie, like, where they're chasing Brad Dourif down the street, which, by the way, the worst cops in Chicago. I'm sorry. Like, the cop drives right fucking past him. I'm like, all he did was had to hide behind a fucking, like, metal pylon.
No, but he gave the command and he said, drive past the Lakeshore Strangler, get the wheelman. It's like, what?
Like,
and then they
or
just
you could hit the guy with your car and incapacitate him.
Run him over and then go get. They get the wheelman and he somehow walks out of county lockup. But the opening is, I had essentially forgot that this is how it opened. I kind of started with the family.
This was like,
because I remembered the voodoo,
burned in my brain,
and I remembered the lightning bolt. Right, so I remembered parts of it. I didn't remember it was like a bigger thing where you see these two men kind of playing their little roles. Right, this game that's it's like very Nighthawks. This game's been going on. What is so funny to me watching it is you're like, I would have picked like a pet store or like a chainsaw store. I don't think because like, what if he went into the wrong store?
Sorry,
and
I've never been to a chainsaw store, but I see where you're getting at.
Oh, sorry, man. You got to move to real America where we have to buy tools to defeat nature. But you're like, what if he went into like, he walked into like, you know, the fucking sex treasure chest. And he's like, oh no, I'm a butt plug now. And then he's like revealing himself to like some sexual deviant. And he's like, actually, this is pretty right up. But so the thoughts of what he could have become.
Actually, what you're describing reminds me of that Shudder movie Slacks with 2 X's.
That's right.
Like the possessed pair of jeans. Like, that's exactly what that is.
Well, there's no shortage
that's
of killers who get into other things. The funny thing about this, though, is I had always, somewhere in my mind, begun to imagine how many times had Charles done this before? And this movie makes it pretty clear that Charles is the first iteration and learned this power, right? Because we go to Charles Lee Ray's apartment and we see these ridiculous murals he's got on the wall, right, of him learning voodoo. And I love that the murals on the wall are also great character
It's
building.
got a real Kevin Spacey in Seven vibe.
But not only that, because you learn a lot about this man, because the first one we see is him like kneeling or doing like a ritual. And I was like, wow, really generous on the dick portions. Like, the dick looks like a Jimmy John sandwich. It bulges out in the middle. I was like, this guy's pretty fucking...
Not just a Jimmy John's, like the full Jimmy John's, like the one where they give you the whole loaf.
The gargantuan, yeah. With the fucking roast beef
the
pouring
gargantuan.
out. That's the dick he gave himself. I don't know that that's exactly the dick he had.
Yeah.
Then
It's
she
the bootlegger
turns the
club.
wall, right? And on the other wall is him. He looks like my brother's, like, 3rd grade notebook where he was drawing himself as a jacked muscle man. And he's just like this huge guy with the fucking gargantuan sandwich dick. And I was like, what the fuck? But it shows you a lot about this guy, right? That Charles Lee Ray is this god unto himself. Maybe he's not. Maybe that's why he's going out and like serial. And I was like, that's a really kind of small detail. And I don't know that they intended the fucking massive dick drawing to be a giveaway into his psyche.
Right. Well, it's interesting because that bit, I thought about that too, is that bit really translates through the rest of the movies. Because, like, how often does the concept and the conceit that Chucky's small, Chucky is a doll, like, he's easily, kick him. Why not? Like, it literally is this bit that flies directly in the face of everyone who has that problem, because he's like, he constantly has this like kind of like, why don't I have a huge dick? Like, it's part of the gag. Like, it's almost if that wasn't addressed in the first movie, it's almost like it wouldn't work moving forward. Like, it would just be a joke that you'd like hit on every movie. But like, because when you think about it, extrapolated throughout the rest of the movie, like, of course he's got this fucking size issue now, man.
But
like,
it's also a really fun inversion of the kind of takedown of slashers at the time, is that all these dicks were these phallic extensions. And I was like, that's a really fun little detail to find in the film, right? Whether that's intended or not.
I love the opening of this movie, though. Like, it is one of my favorite horror movie openings, because
I was trying to think, I'm like, this might be like a top 10 best horror movie opening. Halloween's right there. There are some other really good ones, Nightmare on Elm Street, but like this one,
it sets up succinctly everything you need to know about what's going to happen in this movie. Like, absolutely not. Like, and I'm not talking like not just Charles Lee Ray turning into the doll, but like that combined with the opener with Andy and Karen, like, I cannot imagine a better 20 minutes spent setting up a movie. Like, honestly, it's fascinating to me that this isn't like a case study in how to set the diametric opposition of these characters. Like, you have one person who is clearly not doing the right thing in this world and like takes the opportunity to like pervert the ritual he's been learning, like to the point where like because even Dr. Death brings it up at the end of the movie, which, by the way, we'll get to it. It's my favorite.
I
it's
got
my favorite
a lot
part
about
of the movie.
that. Yeah,
but like, it's a guy who perverts the ritual and he desecrates the moment itself just so he can continue to live. Like, it's this selfish action so that you can keep doing what you're doing. Conversely, we happen upon Andy, who is a selfless little boy who's trying to help his mom out. Clearly he knows like she needs a pick-me-up, so he makes breakfast, and you know, it's his birthday and he's making her breakfast. Like, that's very sweet, that's very sentimental, that's very selfless. So you're rooting for Andy, which again goes to the credit, like, it's important for us to root for Andy at the very beginning of the movie, and you already are. You're not rooting for Chucky, and you hope he died, even though you obviously know he didn't, because otherwise the movie can't go on. But you're rooting for Andy from the jump, and that is something that I like. It's a perfect way to set up a franchise, let alone a movie.
Well, especially one with just this fucking insane gumball machine premise, right? Which is, you know, doll that kills people, right? What they do is they create this actual world of empathy, right? And they go at it from this subtext of, you know, the breaking down of the mother-son unit being raised by TV. There are all these little cracks in the fence, right, that let the wolves in. And our innocence is always at threat, right? Because we're not that nuclear family anymore. And that becomes really fun. What they do, too, is there is an absolute, by him choosing that doll, that fucking stupid fucking little piece of shit doll, what they're doing, it's weird because it's an inverse effect, right? So instead of this serial killer, and Bradley Dorff has one of the great, I'm going to take it to fucking 11 acting faces, right? Twisted with rage and pain and misery. And his voice is fucking unbelievable when he screams at the detective. Right? It's fucking amazing. So take that guy.
Amazing.
And you're not going to do that anymore. You're going to make him this little fucking stupid doll. But what it is we're showing, the movie begins then to, every time we see evil, there's this banality to it, right? That there is just this, it's everywhere around us. It's really small. They have that great kind of De Palma 2-shot, right? That split diameter shit. With the soft
the diopter.
Yeah, where she is, Maggie, the friend, is, you know, kind of sitting there like in the kitchen. And in the background, just him and his fucking friend. And the doll just turns its head and looks at the TV. Like it's fucking nothing. And she's just sitting there. And it's this, evil's always there. It's not this big fucking scary gargantuan-sized dick, you know, muscle voodoo monster from a mural. It's just always there, right? And when we even meet the witch doctor, he's just a dude in a button-up, right? And it's and as that scene becomes one of the fucking scariest moments in any horror movie, Child's Play as a conceit becomes so fucking next level scary. It's scarier than all of these other films.
So awesome.
Because imagine the moment when she sees those batteries and Chucky turns on her, right? That's a classic all-time great horror movie scene. But what I don't think we spend enough time on is that's the moment the entire world breaks. This facade where she's part of this machine at this fucking counter and she's leaving her kid and her kid's just a boy and it's okay that he watches TV all the time. Everything in society breaks. Now we know that there are gods. There are dark magic. God's real. Voodoo's real. And it becomes this thing where you're like, oh, shit. Everyone in this movie is a stupid fucking face doll for this evil fucking god. And it's really fucking intense. Like, it has that. I think those movies where we subtly just admit that God is laughing his ass off at us, that
Yes.
there's a God, and let's say it's a Christian God, you know, that's the American audiences that went to see this movie. Imagine a world where a Christian God, who's all-knowing and all-powerful, says, yes, I'm going to write in the programming that a serial killer can become a murder doll and go kill this nice boy. Like, not even Job got such a raw deal. That sucks. That's just shitty.
You're not wrong. It is a it is a horrifying confirmation that all of this exists. All the things that you don't want to admit, all the things that you privately don't want to admit exist. I think this is always the thing that I like about movies like this, and movies that in general address like not just the supernatural, but like the existence of it. Like that things on this earth that can't be explained are not necessarily, they don't have to be terrifying. Mm-hmm. But I think what's interesting, and especially in movies like Child's Play, is like things on this earth that can't be explained are terrifying because, not because like the devil exists, like so to speak. Like let's say it's a Judeo-Christian devil that exists. Yeah. The thing that's scary is, like you were saying, is that God exists and allows this to happen. Like that is absolutely the most terrifying thing about movies like Child's Play and movies like Halloween. Like these kinds of fascinations with what our conceit is like what good people deserve and what they don't need to get. And that kind of thing is what I think makes this movie. That's what makes these characters compelling. Because if like Karen was a shitty mom who literally like yelled at her kids, sat in front of the TV and like blew smoke in his face all the time, you'd want like, man, I so badly want Chucky to come to life and just fucking ace all the adults in the room. Like, that is, I mean, they're fucking that's trash. That movie.
But that's the thing. You can't be mad at any of the adults when you start extrapolating out. You
can't be mad at the adults, except for Maggie, who clearly is just trying to get out of there so she can get pounded. That's it.
Well, and not to be mean to our religious friends out there, but it's just the thing that never clicked with me, and no one's ever given me a great answer when I was a younger religious kid. Because there's that quote I mention on the show a lot, right? The whether God is real or isn't, either answer is the scariest. And I'm like, nope, being alone in the universe is not nearly as scary as there's some fucking Uber being that uses us as his fucking fifis. That's way scarier, right?
I think like, and again,
that throws everything in this movie out the window.
Right. No, I agree. Can we please talk about Dr. Death? Like, it's one of my favorite scenes in any movie ever. Okay, first off, I love when movies do this, especially horror movies, when they literally stop down the movie to like kind of break down the premise almost. And this is a really fascinating thing, and I had totally forgotten the mythos of this, which is that as long as Chucky stays Chucky, he becomes more human.
Yes. That's cool. Well, also there's this glaring thing that I can't believe doesn't bother more of us at the start of the movie, where you're just like, how did this white guy learn voodoo? Right? Like, we kind of let it go for an hour, and then they're like, aha.
Right, so you see what the actual origin of that is. But again, I had totally forgotten that as he stays in the body, he becomes more human. But like, this has one of my top 5 favorite kills in movies ever. Like, horrifying. Because also, like Dr. Death, come on. Like, who the fuck? Why would you show anybody where your voodoo doll was? This is the stupidest thing ever.
Character building, because it shows you that Charles Lee Ray can infiltrate and gain the trust of anyone, right? Should be a pretty shrewd man who knows that we're God's fifis, right? He should be a little more hip to Babylon or whatever the fuck was written. Thank you, Babylon, for letting us fight death. Like, whoever the fuck, this guy should know. And somehow Charles Lee Ray was able to get in close enough to get all the fucking secrets and know where his mojo was.
Right.
And also just the symbolism of Chucky being a toy who kills him with his little voodoo doll.
With his own toy? Oh, my God, dude.
That, we're all these fucking toys reinforcing that. I just fucking thought that was brilliant, man.
The bone break stuff always gets me. There's absolutely nothing in a movie that will gross me out more or make me more uncomfortable than just, like, bones breaking like that. Oh, my God.
Well, because I remembered the scene, and I was like, well, that guy gives up the information pretty quick, and you're like, yeah, you wouldn't even, as soon as I saw that doll, I'd be like, chill, what do you want to know?
What do you want to know?
Yeah.
I will literally unlock the secrets of the universe for you if you give me that doll.
Yeah, coffee chat, like, I got you. How do you take it? I don't know, because you're a doll now. I don't want to melt your plastic mouth. Whatever you need. But the concept of him reverting to a deformed human demonic little doll man, I almost wish that had made it into the movie. And I gotta say, the effects work and how they pulled Chucky off is exceptional.
It's 1988, man. It is pretty. Outstanding.
An exceptional blend of full body moves, when to go full body, POV, just the feet. They do a great job.
They do. I mean,
but the one shot of a deformed little Bradley Dwarf would have just made it like top 5 best movie.
I would have paid so much money to see a little Brundlefly of Brad Dourif as he's like reverting to Chucky.
Picture it like that opening scene in
Damn it, now that's exactly the movie I want.
Where
Shit.
they cut and it's like a cartoon set and the baby's like, where's my smokes?
Oh my God, please.
But yeah, that would have been exceptional. Yeah, what do you make of All right, we got to talk about the cops.
I mean, I've already stated my case. The police in this movie are utter garbage.
I mean, they catch the strangler. They seem real not good at their job after that. A lot of yucking it up in the house of a murdered lady who a kid just witnessed.
Can we talk about the one cop who clearly is on the job and he's just sitting there reading the fucking paper when she walks in? I was like, guys, at least
another
be professional.
shot at a modern system of authority.
It's
right. The 3 cops
bonkers.
that just look at her slack-jawed doing nothing in her living room.
You're right. I mean, and then there's Chris Sarandon's there's Chris Sarandon's partner who's got a lot of mustaches and sweaters.
He plays essentially a smart mouth teenager who's wearing a prop mustache.
Yeah. He's got the worst Judd Nelson impression going on. Like that's really kind of like what's going on.
Yes.
It's really this is his sort of aloofness is what makes the ending almost land. It's very weird. I love the ending to this movie. I think that kind of that's an all-timer ending. That's fun. Watching a guy shoot a doll and just the blood splatter. I love that effect. That's one of my all-time favorites. But it's ridiculous. It makes no. I could not. It goes back to what we were saying at the very beginning of the pod. This should not work at all.
Yeah.
And yet at the end, I see a doll go limp, fling against the wall.
So good.
I mean, granted. Really, the best note is Andy being when he's just I'll be your friend forever. He goes,
why?
Come on.
Why did they not just end there? Right? When he
that
goes,
is exactly the ending.
This is the end, friend. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah,
that is a
Andy.
fucking mic drop, man.
That was an absolute, who's got the gargantuan-sized dick sandwich now, baby? Andy. Right? My nuggets dropped mid-adventure, and I'm the man now. That
totally
was
agree.
So good. But there's almost a small amount of work they had to do where this gets back to one of my favorite things in movies is you start imagining the next 3 days after the movie ends are going to be way more interesting. That's not the case for the Murder Doll movie. But you do start to wonder, okay, they run in, cop down, cop stabbed. He's with her. The kid just escaped the asylum where the psychiatrist got nuked. And that's one of the first times we see Chucky really gleefully killing someone to turn this to come.
Right.
So what happens when the cops show up to this crime scene? Right? Because one way
CPS
or another,
he's
not just walking away. So bringing in a comedy sidekick cop becomes this way where now you have 2 police officers that are going to have to make the choice. Do we tell the truth, right? And they have that great exchange where they're in on the joke of the movie with us. Mm-hmm. When he's like, now do you believe me? And he goes, yeah, I believes you. But who's going to believe me? And that is the fucking fun. And that's letting you know they knew exactly what was fucking scary about this movie. There's nothing scarier than knowing the truth. You say the truth out loud, and someone goes, "What? You're crazy."
Yeah.
Right? Like, that must... It's weird because we live in a time now where I think everyone thinks they're a victim of that, right? Like, with the internet culture, everyone thinks they know the truth and no one listens, but it's a pretty universal fear.
Everybody thinks they know their version of the truth. Whatever the truth may be, the truth is out there, all that kind of shit. It's absolutely fascinating that this movie really addresses, like you're saying, the gag of the whole movie, which is, do you actually believe this? Mm-hmm. Can you convey this in a meaningful way to another adult who wasn't there, and will they believe you? Like, it's the ultimate boy who cried wolf. You have to believe them because it happened. But, like, one too many times, like, this kid is clearly... I mean, you know, we're all adults. We would walk into the room and be like, this kid clearly has problems. Yeah. And we're all taking him to the insane asylum right now.
Well, the one thing she didn't do that every parent I know would do would be like, oh, Chucky murdered my friend. You'd rip the head off that doll and it'd be in the dumpster. You'd be like, fuck this doll forever. Don't ever talk about Chucky again. But
well, I was thinking also, I mean, that kid would just be loaded up with all kinds of meds at this point. This kid is just
that psychiatrist fucking tried. He had that reanimator syringe.
Oh no, like they would have already they literally would have had that fucking Valium on standby for the mom. But like, you take that, you enjoy that. Like that's gonna be very important later on. But
this is kind of one of the other, and this is the thing. I think this movie's always working at maximum efficiency because the idea of Chucky being made more manifest as his mom believes him, as the detective believes his mom, right? This becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Where the more people believe him, the more real and corporeal Chucky's becoming. The more Charles Lee Ray he is than this fucking little doll. And I think the movie, I think most of us look back, and I think it has a similar issue that Nightmare on Elm Street has, right? Where we look back and we love Freddy, but we all think of Freddy now the way we think of Bugs Bunny. He's a child murderer and rapist, right? Who brutally murders children with a knife glove hand. And you can buy a plushie of him at Target, right?
Yes.
Not 20 feet away from the baby toy aisle usually. And that's just because that character became so popular, and Robert Englund delivered such a performance, it became so captivating that the math became, we're really there more to have fun with Robert Englund than to be scared and examine humanity anymore. And that's what happened to Child's Play, because when that doll, as you said, right, when it's just a doll and the batteries aren't in, that's scary. We all like, ooh, like I do that. I'll hear a toy go off in the middle of the night because they're all motion activated.
Terrifying.
My dog's moving around and a toy's like, boo, boo, and you're like, well, that's probably a demon and I'm dead. Right? But when it turns, and one of the things this movie, whoever crafted that face, right? Because I'm sure there's a lot of, what should Chucky look like when the human comes out? Right. They captured that Bradley Dourif thing so perfectly. The fucking rage and madness on Chucky's face. Like when he comes alive, he's like, you fucking piece of shit, I'll show you to fuck with me. And then it's like when he hits the ground and he rolls like 8 times, you're like, that's so stupid. But they'll cut back to his face. You're like, oh God.
But see, like, it, like that, honestly, like the rolling of that seems just as scary as like Reagan doing like walking on her hands up and down the stairs. Like that was the vibes I got, you know?
For sure. I mean, it's just, it's this weird concept that shouldn't work, but does. And I think it's just one of those, they just happen to make almost exclusively the right choice at every turn.
Well, I mean, it's like, you know, Kevin Yeager's the guy who created the Chucky face. Like he's the guy who did he's not the guy who did the animatronics, but he's the makeup department person who created the doll itself. So like, this is the same guy who started with Freddy on our favorite Nightmare on Elm Street, which is number 2, of course. But like, this is an art. Like that's the art to me, is like that face is so filled with evil, and taking the right cues from Brad Dourif's face, which is like, I don't know, man. I want to say like one of the most expressive faces you've ever seen in films.
I mean, just
Like,
watch the Exorcist 3 jail scene, and it's like, what the fuck?
yeah, like he is expression incarnate, which is a weird thing to say because everyone expresses themselves, but like he literally is just, his face is an expression.
It's
So,
writing another story on top of what he's saying. It's insane.
yeah. For them, yeah, it's like it's just for them to take that and take like the things that he can do, like just with his eyes. Honestly, it's always the eyes for Chucky that freaks me out. Like those eyes are so vicious and hateful.
Yeah.
It's always a thing. And I think that's probably what makes Chucky truly, like the bald face Chucky when he's just the doll is terrifying enough because it's just a thing looking around. It's void of emotion. And normally, I think back to like the Talkie Tina thing from the talking doll bit from Twilight Zone. Twilight Zone, like this, like the first instance of like evil doll thing, and like that's scary enough because everyone is like, the guy is terrified of it. That never changes faces, and I think a lot of the time that like hollowness in those kinds of looks is what's scary. This is the only movie I can think of that changes the face, and it is so amped up. It is so much worse. Like it scares the living shit out of me.
Well, because there's a bit to Chucky, right? Like we see him in the elevator where that old lady's like, ugly doll. He's like, fuck you. Right? So there's a real just hatred for everything with him, right?
Right.
And I think this movie flies in the face of conventional wisdom, which is an almost indescribable way, right?
Right.
What you don't see is scarier than what you see. It's almost a universal truth, right? That the moment you see the monster or the thing, it's just not as scary. This is the one time where, because the bald face Chucky, right? The big fucking dopey, chubby face Chucky,
Right.
is really
Same
fucking
thing.
scary because you're like, oh my God, it's watching TV. It's whispering nothings in Andy's face. And it becomes scary because as they're like telling people, oh my God, this is a serial killer trapped in here. If the doll doesn't respond, you look even crazier. So that's all a level of terror. When Chucky emerges and we see the terror within, now it is working like The Exorcist, right? Where the demon emerged. It's sad enough watching the girl go through it. When the demon emerges from the girl and the two are transposed on each other, it's really fucking scary. And not a lot of movies completely nail the when we unmask the evil within, it's going to still be scary. And I think that moment became really iconic, right? And, you know, sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. But I think to your point, they knew exactly what Chucky's face needed to represent. And it's that the movie constantly attacks. It's one of those great ideas that everyone hears and they go, ha, ha, I would watch that movie.
Right.
But when it comes time to give your dollars, you're like, come on, really? A fucking Cabbage Patch? All right. But what this movie does is it constantly dismantles. It's like, oh, and your God is a lie. Chaos reigns, right? The end is here.
Every
Serial
step of the way
killers.
they dismantle it. Every step.
Yeah. And then it's like, oh, now look at this doll's face. Is that fucking funny to you? Oh, now everyone thinks you're crazy. They're taking your kid away. It constantly is steering right into the curve.
Right.
And so everything you want to hold against the movie becomes a weapon for the movie to scare you more. And it's just this perfect blend of character, and it's fucking weird, and it's funny, and it just kind of all congealed together in this fucking perfect bit of madness. I'm not kidding when I told you, I was like, I think this is one of the hardest, most impressive feats I've ever seen in a horror film. That they
I don't
made
disagree.
This work. There's a lot of evil toy and doll movies. Not a fucking one of them holds a candle to Chucky. He's the king of this subgenre.
Yeah.
Right? There are great entries. None of them do what Chucky does. And it's not because of the Freddy Chucky to come. It's because of this fucking Chucky in this movie. And yeah, I mean, it bore a pop culture phenomenon, an entire franchise.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, It's amazing. The fact that it works, we're sitting here 20 years later talking about it. That is a test. 30 years. That is a testament, man.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's the first movie that scared the fuck out of me. And I went on to live my life as a person who I love horror movies more than any other movies. They always work for me. I feel like a lot of us, we got scared that first time and we're always chasing that feeling, that unknown, that unsafe, right? We want to see the underbelly. And so I think it's really cool, man, that, all these years later, having a kid as my own, I get to re-watch and re-enjoy and re-be scared by the movie that started it all for me and honor it with this podcast. Hopefully we did a good job. It was definitely awesome. We've been wanting to do Child's Play for a while, so this was amazing.
This was a good start to this month of Abyss.
Yeah, that's it, guys, for Child's Play. That's not it for Chucky. Again, guys, every day this month, 31 days, 31 pods. That's how we do October here on the Film Alchemist. We have taken the first step. We're off the cliff. We're falling into the abyss. Our October month of madness, evil's plaything. I hope you guys are ready for all the fun. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you for all your support. Find us on patreon.com/filmalchemistpod if you want to help us a little more. Get a little deeper into the Alchemist cove, as it were. The cave, cove, Alchemist cave. We'll think of a catchier hangout location. Subscribe to the YouTube, Film Alchemist. Email the show, filmalchemistpod@gmail.com. Find us on all the socials you're on. More than anything, gird thy loins for tear tomorrow. Child's Play 2.